Well, look what we have here. Another EV curious person plugging in for an episode of the Out of Spec podcast. Great to have you here. I'm your host, Francie. If you don't know me by now, that probably means that you're new, which is awesome. I love making new friends. Thank you for joining us here where we talk about all things EV. My goal basically is to learn everything I possibly can about electric vehicles, what's going on, the history of things, the future of things, and be able to relay that to you not only in a timely manner, but also in a curious way as well, so that you have all the facts so that you can follow along with this advancing technology in our advancing world when it comes to electric vehicles and stay up to date. Today, we are talking about an automaker that I'm sure you have heard of, and that's Tesla and their new offering for United States and Puerto Rican citizens, and that is the Tesla Model 3 Refresh long-range rear-wheel drive. Okay, this has an EPA estimated range of 363 miles, which is the highest EPA estimated range compared to the rear-wheel drive, the long-range all-wheel drive, and the performance all-wheel drive options. 0 to 60 in 4.9 seconds, if that matters to you. And then a top speed of 125 miles per hour as well. Estimated deliveries already estimated to be July and August of 2024. That is this month and next month. They're ready to get these to you, apparently. Let's talk about how this car starts at a $42,490 MSRP. Of course, when you put on incentives, that brings it down into the $30,000 area, and it's pretty impressive. Tesla's got a pretty competitive offering here, so we're going to talk about more about the model and what it includes, and then also talk to Coleton and Andreas later, folks that you know if you've been watching other Out of Spec channels, about this car and also their experiences as Tesla owners, and now comparing that to the options that are out there. All right, let's plug in. This episode is made possible by the support we get from Fort Collins Kia. If you are in the market for any electric Kia, not only do they never add market adjustments, they will deliver your car to you anywhere in the 48 contiguous states for out-of-spec viewers. More information in the link in the show notes. Alrighty, folks, like I said, we are talking about the new Tesla Model 3 rear-wheel drive long range that is released to America and Puerto Rico, like I said. So I will share my screen to show the tweet that came out earlier from Tesla North America. And it says Model 3 long range rear wheel drive, like I said, now available. I named those specs earlier in the intro, but they are saying that it starts at $34,990 after the $7,500 federal tax credit. Of course, your state might have different tax credits as well. So definitely always look into that. For instance, Colorado has $5,000. And then I was looking at some other states that have just straight up, it's either a tax incentive where it's taken off the MSRP or it's a tax rebate, and they're up to $5,000 and $4,000. So it really starts to get pretty enticing when it comes to finding a good EV. I know that a lot of people don't want to buy a Tesla for whatever reason. They want to diversify, but this is kind of cool to see because it offers this variant with the rear wheel drive and the long range offers a balance of extended range and improved efficiency that is also very cost effective. And range is something that a lot of people are concerned about. They worry, and also people say it's charging anxiety, maybe that the chargers will work. But either way, the longer the range, probably the better the reception. Like I said, deliveries are estimated from July to August. The rear-wheel drive can sometimes be more efficient than an all-wheel drive option because there is one motor that leads to lower energy consumption, and it can also contribute to a longer driving range, which is crucial for EV buyers. The rear-wheel drive EVs can also be less expensive to produce than all-wheel drive models, as they just require fewer components, one motor instead of two. And then the cost savings, which Tesla has proven to be good at, can be passed on to consumers, making rear-wheel drive models more affordable. So for the background of the Model 3, before we dive in with Coleton and Andreas, is that there was the Model 3 that came out many, many moons ago. In 2018, the Model 3 became the best-selling electric car globally. In 2019, the cumulative sales exceeded 300,000 units globally. And then by the end of 2020, Tesla had delivered over 500,000 Model 3s worldwide, worldwide. And then the sales numbers just continued to grow. Now the Model Y is the most popular EV sold in the world, but this recent refresh that happened from Tesla has only happened to the Model 3 so far. That's the only thing available to the public all over the world. And in 2023, they introduced the significant refresh of the Model 3 since the launch, and it was nicknamed the Highland. The exterior has new headlights, taillights, a revised front bumper, and new wheel designs. And then the interior is an even more somehow minimalist dashboard, a new steering wheel. There's no stalks, similar to the Model S and X with the yoke, and the updated materials for more premium feel. It's quieter, it's a more comfortable ride, so they've definitely improved that. The technology in the infotainment system has improved processing power and new features, including a rear screen entertainment for passengers. And with the performance of the vehicle, this has also been enhanced. The battery system has better range and efficiency, and there's an updated suspension for that improved ride comfort. Now I want to talk to Coleton and Andreas. Coleton and Andreas have both owned Tesla Model 3s. Andreas just came into acquiring a new one, so he made that, and Coleton has lived with two of them. One of them is leased and sitting around because he already hit the 30,000 mile mark. So let's talk to them about their thoughts on the new Model 3 long-range rear-wheel drive, which I always have trouble saying, rear-wheel drive, RWD. Let's go ahead and let me stop talking to you. And now I'll include Coleton and Andreas in the conversation. Let's get them on here. All right. I have now with me Coleton from Out of Spec Dealing. Excuse me.
Out of Spec Dealing. That's good. Thank you. So I got that out. That's good.
I'm here with Coleton from Out of Spec Detailing, and then Andreas, who you probably have seen if you've tuned into, I mean, a lot of the races, not only the EV truck race from Florida to California, but also you were on the Race to Vegas race recently, and you're always down to have an adventure with Out of Spec. So welcome both of you to the Out of Spec podcast. You're also both former and current, kind of simultaneously, Model 3 owners, different years, different trims, but yeah, thanks for coming onto the podcast. How excited were you waiting for the Model 3 rear-wheel drive long-range option from Tesla? No, neither of you. They both are shaking their heads. They're like, nah. Okay, so Andreas, I know you just got a delivery today, and
Yes.
There's this announcement today. So maybe tell me a little bit about that. What did you take into your possession today?
Yeah, so I'm taking this podcast episode as a little bit of a therapy session too, to get rid of my buyer's remorse a little bit, because I literally just got home and saw a text from Coleton. I was like, "Did you see the new Model 3?" I was like, No, please don't," because I took delivery it's 10 p.m. now, 11 hours ago, of my new 2024 long-range all-wheel drive Model 3, and I was super happy. I'm still super happy. And then I saw this, and my main concern was always range. I want range. And here they are, announced one with even more range and $5,000 less. But there's more to it, right? So, yeah, I'm sure we're going to go into the details, but yeah, I'm a little down, but also not. I'm not sure what I would have done.
What you're feeling.
Yeah. So I'm like,
I feel like you must not be the only one experiencing this, because the Model 3 refresh was exciting. You know, they have these options, and we weren't exactly sure like what Tesla was going to do next. But I don't think you're alone in prioritizing range either. So I wonder if anyone can commiserate with you. But maybe you're still working through it, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I want to see. I'm sure Kyle or anyone for Ausbeck is going to do the high range test, right? I want to see the real difference between this rear-wheel drive long range and the all-wheel drive long range. I don't think it's going to be what's it stated? It's a 21 mile difference, right? So it's 22 miles. So the all-wheel drive has 341, the rear-wheel 363. Yeah. So
that's 20 miles. Hopefully that's not too devastating. Yeah,
and it looks good. 363. It's like getting up there.
It does. Yeah, it looks really good. I've had people specifically say the 400 mark. That's what they're waiting for, and then they'll take an EV on. And I guess we're getting closer. But the rear-wheel drive option, allows this to happen. You're able to be a bit more efficient. But Coleton, okay, you messaged me earlier. You were like, "Oh my gosh, can't wait to do a podcast on this." Why? What do you feel about the Tesla Model 3 rear-wheel drive long range?
I think this sits in such an interesting place in Tesla's kind of range of vehicles, I guess you would say. So to me, right off the bat, I mean, okay, it's a couple $1,000s more, about 3,500, just doing mental math there, than the rear-wheel drive Model 3. So I do think a lot of folks are going to be kicking themselves for getting rear-wheel drive Model 3. Now this comes out with more range and also some very important different distinctions compared battery pack wise and things like that. That's where they're probably getting the range from this. So, my assumption with this, Andreas, you can speak to this probably as well. I'm assuming this is the same battery pack that you just picked up in your car today, but
Yep.
just with the rear motor, not having the front motor on it. The important thing with this car, Francie, is it now qualifies for the federal tax credit, which the rear wheel drive Model 3 does currently not. So it's actually cheaper than the LFP battery pack. So I think that's why that's so interesting. So we're now, I guess, technically at the place where we have a $35,000 Tesla Model 3 out and tons of range, good performance. We're going to have a cat come on here. Hello, kitty.
Hello, kitty.
So I think it's a really interesting space, and definitely now the jump from, long range rear wheel drive to the all wheel drive is a little bit smaller, I guess you would say, but I really think it sits in a neat spot.
Obviously, Tesla has competitive pricing and they've been able to bring it down over time. We're talking about battery chemistry, but also economies of scale. I mean, this was the best-selling EV for a while until Model Y took over, and that has just really been popular as well. But when you consider what's out there, Colton, you just got an EV6 lease. How does that compare to what you're driving now with that new lease?
Yeah, so this new car, I mean, still on lease is more expensive than what I got, but definitely a lot more range than my EV6. I would assume this charges exactly the same as my Model 3 Performance, my 2023, with the same Panasonic pack in there. I think it should be exactly what we're looking for here. Now, Tesla's been doing some weird stuff with battery chemistry, different battery packs, the new tax credit if you get this one versus that one. There's a bunch of weird stuff going on for sure. But what I think is the interesting thing here is this is really kind of a long range all wheel drive. Now, it doesn't have all the interior components, so I don't believe you get the better sound system in this. So the long range rear wheel drive gets most of the same, I guess, interior components as the rear wheel drive version. You don't get the upgraded sound system that you do with the long range. But I think the most important thing here, and I think why you don't see a huge range discrepancy between the rear wheel drive and the all wheel drive. Now, this is assuming a lot. My assumption is they're using the rear motor, the permanent magnet motor, out of the all wheel drive, and you just don't have the front motor on there. So what's really interesting though, like Andreas, when he takes his all-wheel drive out on a road trip, basically when you're cruising down the highway, that front induction motor is completely disconnected. You're running in really just rear-wheel drive mode. The only negative with that is now you're carrying around the weight of an extra motor, different components up front. So that's, I think, an interesting display of, okay, how much does just having a motor and weight up there play into the range? And of course, this 363 is an EPA test, and are they ran on the same cycle as the long range? We'll definitely figure all this out once we get these cars out into the public for sure.
There's one more open question I had regarding the range, because the 341 EPA for the all-wheel drive, right? This has been now for a couple of months, and they didn't change that estimate after they offered the Panasonic pack, which has more kilowatt hours, right? I think it's 82 instead of 75. So I wonder if the all-wheel drive, the Panasonic, gets actually more range than the all-wheel drive with the LG battery pack. We don't know this yet, right? I guess. So that would be an interesting test as well.
It will be.
Yeah.
Yeah, Andreas, I mean, I feel like you do have a good setup with the one that you got anyways. Like we said, I'm not sure if it's a little bit of a difference, but I think this will probably appeal to a lot of people due to the really incredible pricing and the increased range.
Colton, you mentioned it might have a slightly or it won't have the premium interior, right? And not the stereo system. Or do we know this for a fact, or are you guessing?
Oh,
Because
yeah,
I was on the site.
And the only reason I'm seeing that is because it still looks like the mesh on the black one, which would indicate that it doesn't have the additional speaker that the long range does. Now, this could be totally wrong. Long range and performance have the 17 speaker, and then the rear wheel drive variants only have the 9 speaker. So that to me says they don't have the premium interior in these.
Interesting.
Okay.
But yeah, seems like the trade-off for the price kind of makes that okay. I mean, how big of a difference do you think that interior makes for someone's experience?
I mean, I personally have not been completely blown away with the sound system in the new Model 3. I have felt this because I've driven some demo cars and they really sounded like tin cans to me, but I think once you adjust the EQs and everything, it definitely sounds a lot better. I just need to spend a little bit more time with the car, and I'm sure we can get it dialed in and it'll sound good. Because factory sounds never are amazing. You kind of want more bass, more mids or lows, everything like that. And it definitely takes time anytime you get a new vehicle to kind of dial that system into your preference. But I think this again really sits in an interesting spot. And I think the question is going to be, okay, so let's say you don't qualify for the $7,500 federal tax credit. Do you get the LFP battery pack and the rear wheel drive, or do you just get the long range? Because there is still a price difference there. But if you definitely do qualify, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer, I would say, to go the long range, unless you're just someone who wants to have, full charge your LFP car every single day, which this one, of course, you're going to probably charge to 80% daily, have less usable range, but definitely a lot more range on those road trips. So I think it's an interesting position, and I'm kind of curious why they're keeping the rear wheel drive regular one LFP pack and not maybe discounting that a little bit more. I don't know, because here in Colorado, Francie, I think I looked, this car comes in right at under $30,000 with the federal tax credit and the $5,000 state tax credit, which is absolutely insane for the amount of car you get.
Yeah, it truly is. It's the most competitive pricing that we see for EVs with this kind of build out, right? I mean, I think there's some comparisons that maybe you could make, and this is not leasable right now either, right?
Yeah, you can definitely lease these.
Well, when I do go to the lease here, though, I don't see the rear wheel drive long range option.
Interesting. I wonder why that's the case.
I wonder if I don't really know. If I think from a business standpoint, I would think now we want to sell these before we lease them. People will want to buy this. They're so inexpensive. Why lease them anyways if they're our least expensive option if you are able to access the federal tax credit? I don't know. What do y'all think?
I mean, I think they position this to buy it, of course. This is the sub $35,000 Model 3 everybody's been talking about for years and years and years. And I think, yes, of course, it's not technically if you don't qualify for it, but I think a lot of folks do. So, yeah, I mean, that's a little strange that they're not leasing that. But from, my thoughts, you just have to kind of buy this thing.
You just got to buy it. You heard it here first, y'all. Coleton says you just got to buy it.
I've found personally that Tesla leases right now are not leasing that well. I mean, I was, when I was comparing that to the EV6, I was going to be paying $450 a month or so for a rear wheel drive one with, $2,000 out of pocket compared to my $187 a month with $1,500 out of pocket for a more expensive car, all wheel drive, better charging, yada, yada, yada. That was a little bit of a no-brainer why I went with this. But I really think this car is going to sell well, in my opinion. And I do think, for folks who, like Andreas, I know Andreas is big into range. I personally am not a huge range person. I just want a car that charges well. And the EV6 is really teaching me of how a car can charge unbelievably well.
Unbelievably well.
Yeah. But, my Model 3 performance and my 2021 long range I have no complaints with the charging. The supercharger network is truly amazing on there, doing quick stops, hopping V3 to V3 on road trips. I mean, it's pretty darn straightforward, I would say. So I'm surprised that this isn't getting more range, but I guess that's kind of the penalty I guess you take, just taking that induction motor out of the front, still running, at least this is my assumption, the same permanent magnet rear with the Panasonic battery pack in there. But we'll do all the testing, of course, once we get these cars into our hands, see how it actually charges. Is it different? I'm just all assuming this. Tesla is not very clear on what battery pack you're getting, yada, yada, yada. So
yeah, it seems like it's a good option, but in general, if you want a Tesla, this is the most competitively priced one. But it does start to play out. What are you specific about? If you're specific about the interior or the range or the battery pack, although we don't have all the official answers on that yet. Andreas, do you have something to add?
Yeah, didn't dual motor cars used to have more range than single motor in the past? Am I
I
remembering
think
this
that's because they
correctly?
used larger battery pack. Because if I remember off the top of my head, like LFP pack is like, gosh, I'm gonna totally get this wrong. I want to say it's like 59 kilowatt hours, where my Model 3 Performance is 77 kilowatt hours usable, so probably 82 kilowatt hours gross, which I'm assuming that's exactly what this battery pack is in the new rear-wheel drive long range.
Yeah. And I guess the dual motor is still more fun to drive. I know someone on Twitter just commented, or X, whatever, that the rear-wheel drives are more fun to drive. I wouldn't agree with that. What do you think, Coleton? You're like the performance expert here.
I am definitely not the performance expert. That is definitely Kyle's category. I think the cars, because you take the weight out of that front end, become a little bit more happy at the rear, and you can have some fun. But you definitely have way more power in your all-wheel drive. And like I texted you earlier, get some sexy buttons so we can do some drifting and stuff in the snow and really unlock that. Because that's the only thing that really I wish the dual motors had, is just a track mode, or let you turn some stuff off to let you go have a little bit more fun, where, of course you get a performance, you have full track mode, yada, yada, do all of that stuff. But I really think this is a great entry point for a lot of folks that, are very, of course, budget conscious on this. And a lot of people that don't really need all-wheel drive. I mean, we're kind of a little bit more singular here in Colorado, and of course, the Northeast, where snowstorms are an issue. But I mean, Ryan, that works with us, still drives his rear-wheel drive around all the time. I mean, you put on some good snow tires, not a problem there. So
I think he sold it, actually.
Did he really? I didn't even know that.
I think he got a hybrid. I got to talk to him about this. But
Yeah, because I feel like, one, if you have an old Tesla Model 3 and you've been waiting to trade in, I mean, would y'all suggest that this is a good time to trade in for another Model 3? Of course, maybe you're not considering a different model.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I did. I didn't get much for the 3, but anyway, it would have been even less a year from now, right? So it's like when do you do it, right? There's never a perfect moment. So yeah, if you want to upgrade, I think right now it's the perfect timing with tax credit and FSD transfer. If this applies to you.
Tell me about the FSD transfer.
Yeah, that was surprisingly easy. So when you order the car, right, like in the app, you can right away request, okay, what you want to transfer FSD from my old Model 3 to a new Model 3, just a few taps, and then it's done. What I didn't notice only until a couple days before I took delivery, that you are supposed to keep ownership of your current Tesla with FSD for 48 hours after you take delivery of the new one, which is sometimes a problem because most people, I guess, would trade their cars in, right? I think if you trade it with Tesla, it doesn't really matter. But for instance, I traded in with another company, so I had to tell them, hey, I need still access to the car for 48 hours. Luckily, it was transferred like right when I picked up my car. It was already done, so it was super easy. But I was definitely a little bit worried. Like, imagine you sell your car and then FSD is gone and you can't transfer it anymore. So yeah,
that's a good flag. Yeah.
But it was super easy. Yeah. And
okay.
Yeah.
I think it's a great option. It's so inexpensive, and I've been always advocating that we need more affordable EVs that are still of great value. Tesla's able to do it because of their long-standing presence in the market and the fact that they've been able to sell so many and have many different moving parts of the Tesla company. That's not just cars, but I would love for someone else to catch up and really be competitive. I'm still waiting a little bit. I think if you really don't want Tesla, of course, you can look at the other options, but this is a very competitive one. But I know you too. You're Tesla Model 3 owners, so what can I tell you? Anyways.
And EV6 owner.
And EV6 and ID4
and
and
Audi.
what else? Yeah.
Yeah, different toys for every day. But I think this is going to be a big home run for Tesla. I really do. And I think it's an interesting car. Can't wait to drive it and see, all the tests that Kyle does with it. I'm sure it's going to be pretty fascinating to see how much range this actually does and how this thing charges. I know we've had issues with the LG packs recently. Like, they just do not charge well compared to the Panasonic packs. So I think that's really good. It's nice that you get more power in this, more range, of course. Do I think the premium interior is a huge deal? I don't really think so. I mean, honestly, I think, Tesla sound systems, in my impression, have always been quite decent. And the rear wheel drive one is completely adequate, I think, for most people. But yes, having more speakers, more bass, more subs is always better in there. Is it worth the price jump if you're really on the fence? Probably not, I would say. I think this is a ton of car for the money.
Yep.
Completely agree. I think it is very significant and hope to see more and more EVs like it. Long range, inexpensive.
Cheers.
And hopefully good charging. But we, like you said, Coleton, we will have to see. All right, you Tesla Model 3 owners. Thank you for joining me on the Out of Spec podcast. I can't wait to get our hands on one of these. I'll probably be taking back a Model 3 to Tennessee, I think is how it's going to turn out. But it's not a refresh. So I'll have a good time experiencing this and then being able to sit in the Model 3 refresh in time and really compare it as well. Maybe yours, Andreas, if I'm lucky enough.
Sure. Yeah, I already know. I won't see my car. Like, luckily, Kyle is in Germany for another week, so at least I'll have my new car for a week. But then I think it's going to be gone for like a month.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Maybe you can take the VinFast instead. Yes, perfect, because it'll be here in Colorado. Nice. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Coleton. Thanks, Andreas, for joining me on the Out of Spec podcast. Would love to know what y'all think about this extremely inexpensive and pretty good value for your buck EV from Tesla. Not a huge surprise, but like Coleton said, I think it fits into their offering as well as the market pretty significantly and stands out. So we'll see you next time in the next episode. Drive safe, stay charged. Peace out. Bye.
Yeah.